But then you say parenthetically, curiously, however, they do resemble historical descriptions of demons.
Yes, they do. As a matter of fact, we don't have to look far to see historical descriptions of demons. All we have to do is go to any historical library. There are dozens of them in Europe, here in America, where they have artifacts from ancient Babylon, the area of the ancient Assyrians, Nineveh, ancient Rome. They have dug up little statues of the creatures that were worshipped back in those days. We know them to be representations of demons. And guess what? They look just like the modern manifestations of little UFO-nauts. I'm thinking particularly those big-eyed grays. You can go to the libraries and go to the museums of Europe and see dozens of little teraphim, little statues that were worshipped by the ancients, and they have an amazing resemblance to today's UFO-nauts.
Now, let's talk for a moment about the ranks of angels.
Yeah, well, we mentioned the cherubs, and kiruv in the Hebrew, which translates cherub in English, is the designation of that is a kind of loving care. That is to say, if you can imagine a mother watching over a child, that idea is expressed there. Then you get into the angels themselves, which seem to be the archons, and below those, in the New Testament, we have the exousion, or exousia, the delegated authorities. Below those, we have the rulers of darkness, or night rulers, and then we have demons. So really, there seem to be the cherubs, and then below that, 4 classes of angels. Archons, would call them archangels. Exousia, the delegated authorities, which we'd call ordinary angels. Below those would be the powers of the darkness. And I'm talking now about angels as we experience them today. Paul speaks of the 4 classes as being the powers delegated under Satan. So there are 4 levels of power, and we can assume that in their origins, angels were also delegated in much the same way. It's fascinating that people who perceive UFO-nauts in one way or another, whether they're abductees or experiencers, seem to rank the pilots of these UFOs in similar fashions. There are often reports given of dominant figures, very handsome appearing creatures, mid-range creatures who have a less handsome appearance, the little grays who seem to be servants. Some people have called them robots, and then many people have had nightmarish experiences in regard to UFOs. So there seem to be ranks among these UFO-nauts that roughly correspond to what the Bible calls principalities and powers.
Now, some people see a connection between these angels as well as the demons in this study of UFOs, but also historically in the study of the Nephilim and the flood of Noah. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I would. As a matter of fact, and you've written a lot about this yourself, the Nephilim, and to me, and we have a great deal of historical precedence for the fact that angels walked among men. The Greeks, the Romans spoke of exactly what the Bible speaks of in Genesis chapter 6 when it says that these fallen angels walked among men, took wives from among the daughters of men, and set up their own kingdoms. They seem to have done this, and here I'd like to talk with you and get your opinion, but in my opinion, they seem to have done this to establish a race, basically a race fashioned after their own genetic patterns, a super race, if you will, over which they could rule. That seems to have been their program. The book of Enoch seems to support that. The Bible supports it. And you know, it's fascinating. Even philosophers like Plato support that. And a lot of people don't know about this. But here's a biblical theme that you can find right in the pages of Plato's dialogues. In the Critias, for example, he says the god Poseidon came down to earth, and he took an earthly wife. And by the way, the family of this girl is mentioned by Plato, the mother and the father. Their only daughter was named Clito, and Poseidon, the god, took her as a wife, and he sired 5 pairs of twins, and he raised them to manhood. And one of the children of that union was named Atlas. And he built an island called Atlantis, which was later destroyed in the flood. Now, that's it. That's from the philosopher Plato, and it sounds remarkably like what we find in the Bible. Wouldn't you agree?
I absolutely would, and I'll take it even a step further. Human DNA corruption in the days of Noah, this story is certainly very suspiciously similar to the story you just told, to the legend behind the Titans, that the gods came down and intermingled with humans, out of which came forth these demigods. It's interesting that you mentioned Poseidon. There's a movie, and I can't even think of the name of it right now. It's made for teenagers, but it's in the theaters right now, and the idea is this boy discovers that he is a demigod, that he is the long offspring of the god Poseidon. Wow. And there was a news report last week in which one of the guys who was reviewing this film said, no, it's not Clash of the Titans. Nita was holding up a card to me. No, it's another one right now. It's like a boy's name, and anyway, he learns that he is the offspring of Poseidon. But the film reviewer pointed out how that during the dialogue in this movie, and people are learning that among us right now are numerous people who don't realize that they are the offspring of these mythical gods, but that they are walking around us right now. And if they could discover this reality about themselves and get in touch with that energy, they would be able to do supernatural-like type things, have extra human ability. And there, in the dialogue in this, it says that there are even people such as U.S. presidents. Mm-hmm. And the critic for this film says that there was a subtle message in this new movie that's out right now that Obama might be a demigod based on the dialogue that's in this film. But in any case, let me get back to the UFOs, because do you believe that echoed today in what happened with the Watchers and this DNA corruption, that we are seeing something similar in these UFO flap areas and abduction areas where people are abducted, ovum is removed, scoop marks, animals are found with parts of their DNA removed in laser-like fashion? I mean, is this kind of a modern mirror to what was going on in the days of old? And if so, what are they doing? Why are they collecting human DNA?
I absolutely believe that, and I believe they have a program in which is at least 60 years old. We can track it back to about 1947, which brings up another topic, by the way. But let me just interject from my personal perspective that I came out of a family who were in the aircraft business and who were in the business of designing various kinds of devices. I'll just put it that way, for the government. And many of my relatives were and still are classified above top secret. And the table conversation that I heard going back into youth was that there were significant UFO events that had been covered up by the government, but more than that, the government was actually in the business of collecting technology from aliens, which was then being integrated into our own design technology. I heard this as a child, essentially, and so that has kind of colored what I believe. And as I've listened over the years to what other people are saying, I have come to the conclusion that this is the same sort of bargain that took place in the days before the flood, in which the fallen angels came down to man and said, we have this superior technology that we will offer you in exchange for what? For your blood, your DNA, and your souls, so that we may rule over you.